Comic Collectors Guild members. This is Wes, Comics Addicts on Instagram, and this has come together a focus on the membership of the Comic Collectors Guild. And today I have Tony Carlson from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. How are you today, Tony?
Oh, not too bad. Nice and gloomy outside. It's kind of wet and soggy. It's a good day to be inside and pretend to work, but actually just read some books and get caught up with organizing. So I'm happy.
Yeah, it's a really rough life that we're having right now. We get to stay inside and read all day.
Yeah. Being down in the comic book cave, for 8 hours or more a day is definitely rough for sure. I'm suffering.
Are you a single guy?
No, I'm definitely married, but fortunately, I have a wife that understands the hobby, and it's definitely an addiction, and so she's aware of that and kind of gives me my own space to do my own thing. So I'm very fortunate.
You are indeed fortunate. Usually after 1 hour, my children or my wife are looking for me. So, okay, well, thanks for agreeing to come on and being interviewed for Come Together. I'm going to start off where we always start off and ask you to go into the details of your personal collecting journey and how it all began for you.
It started, when I was a kid growing up in Northwest Iowa. We don't have comic book shops, but what we do have is grocery stores. And they have, this is like way back in the mid 90s, early 90s. They have just a magazine rack of whatever magazines you could get at a grocery store. And there was always completely random comic books and whatever. And my parents would just give me one to like shut me up as I go throughout the store and buy stuff. So I'm just look at the comic book, and at the end of the grocery store trip, hey, time to put that back. So I would always look forward to going to grocery store shopping so I could look at some comic books. And it was never anything in order. It was like a hodgepodge of whatever. But for whatever reason, they never, ever had any Marvel. It was always DC and Dark Horse. So I got to see cool Batman and Superman stuff, and then Predators and Aliens. So that's how it started. It snowballed from there. Did a stint in the service. Unfortunately, I couldn't buy any books, when I was in the military. But definitely got a chance to go to Europe for a while. Hit up some cool comic book shops in Europe. And then I got out of the Army, and then I made up for lost time. And now I'm here, and I've got quite the collection going. I've got a couple giant file cabinets like this full of books, and I'm definitely excited for the future to see where my collection's going to grow.
So it sounds like you had a little hiatus between beginning and where you are now.
Yeah, definitely a hiatus, but that I was doing my best to keep up, digital reading, and a lot of the movies were coming out, so I was definitely checking out some of the movies. But one thing that the Army doesn't have is comic book stores, unfortunately. Who knows? Maybe someday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your break happened during the period of time that I refer to as the comic apocalypse. The 90s and the early noughties, when it was just like, I actually had a similar break. I was in college during that time, so I know that of which you speak.
One of the issues that I missed in my time in service was DC's Blackest Night. I missed that whole arc, but and I always I read every digital issue that came out. But one thing I told myself I wanted to do when I had the ability to was pick up that entire run, and I did. I ended up picking up, and I enjoyed it. We just did a review on it on our other show, the Retro Review, and that's still one of the first runs that I read outside the service that actually got to enjoy on my own time and hunt and search for issues in certain conditions that I wanted. So that was definitely will always be an issue and a run near and dear to my heart.
Well, you brought it up, so let's talk about your show. You do a comic book related show on YouTube. Looks like you do it with some of your Instagram friends. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, every Saturday night we do what's called the retro review, and that is we pick a cool storyline and we just talk about it. We have a lot of fun doing it. It's with Comic Fu 2814 and Tim the Comic Collector, who's also a member of the guild. We've had a lot of fun on it. They started the show. They invited me in as a third wheel, so to speak, but they each have their own individual stuff as I do, but it's the one time a week we get to come together and talk books, and that's the only time I ever get to talk books with anybody. Is on Saturday nights, really, or if I'm in someone else's chat.
Well, maybe your appearance on here will change that. More people will seek out your opinions. Your personal comic book channel is called, if I remember correctly, it's just Tony Fett, kind of like your Instagram handle. Am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct in that. I started off just it's weird my YouTube career, if you call it that, even though I'm not making any money, but whatever. It started actually on PlayStation Live because they have that cool little camera that comes with it, and I was wondering how people were just hanging out in front of the PlayStations just streaming, and a little light bulb in my head was like, hey, I wonder if like people watch me press comic books, because I have my own comic book press and I clean books just for fun. And it actually, in the beginning, I had more views by far on PlayStation than I ever did on YouTube. And then I saw a little bit of success on Twitch and eventually made the jump over to YouTube, where it morphed into interviews, where I got to interview some cool collectors throughout the time I've been on YouTube. And now I'm kind of transitioning into showing off my collection and my autographs. But there's definitely some cool things that I've been able to do along the way, like interview the president and head grader of CBCS, Steve Borak. And he's a cool guy, and he has my phone number now. So that's kind of cool. So that's like my comic book milestone, is I made it there. And now every time I'm at a convention where he's there, I always make uh, a showing to him. I always high five him and get a picture with him, and that's always been really cool to me.
So you just mentioned you do comic book pressing and cleaning. Is that something that you do on the side as a side hustle?
No, and it's something that I probably never will do as a side hustle. Although a lot of people are doing that now for several reasons. The two biggest ones is there's a lot of people out there that are leaps and bounds better than me, and two, I would feel awful if somehow I did something to somebody's book, that means a lot to them, and here I am just like, oops, accidentally set the temperature too high and I set your book on fire, my bad. So I'd rather mess up books in my collection, because then I could just be mad at myself.
Much safer that way. Let's talk about your collection. We always ask our interviewing members to highlight three important parts of their collection, whether it's something that's valuable or has deeper meaning to you. Would you like to start off with your first item?
Yes, the first item of business today is Dark Knight's Metal #1, and it is signed by Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and Jonathan Galpin. I can never remember how to say his name, but it is from the personal collection of Scott Snyder, which was kind of cool. That's it's the right now it's the only book I have that was someone's personal collection. It's kind of an interesting thing to have in your collection. The artist or the writer or whoever, like, they owned that book, and they gave it to you, and now it's yours. And it's really cool. On the label, on the CBCS label, it actually says that from the personal collection of Scott Snyder on it, which is again, that's really cool. Who could say that they've owned someone else's book before? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I got lucky. It's a 9.8, and it's something I really enjoy showing people.
How did you happen to get something out of Scott Snyder's personal collection?
Um, I can't go into a whole lot of detail. I you will just say I know a guy that knows a guy that was able to line something up for me, and I was able to get that for nothing. And it's like it's not a holy grail, but it's a book that means a lot to me because I know someone within the industry who's a mover and a shaker who can make things happen, who remembered me and hooked me up. So that's pretty cool.
It's really good to have those kind of connections. And what is your second item you're going to highlight today?
The second one is the Batman Who Laughs #1. It is the Mike Mayhew Ultimate Edition. It is also a CBCS 9.8. But what's great about this one is it's really uncommon to see that book in the wild, especially at a 9.8. And on the label, it's notated that there's only 250 9.8s in existence. So this is serial number 169. It's a high serial number, but it's kind of interesting to know that there's only 250 in the world that have ever been graded at a 9.8, and one of them is in my basement. So that's kind of awesome.
We know the reason behind that, why there's so few 9.8 grades?
I don't know, and it doesn't really give an indication as to why that there's only 259.8. Maybe something happened at the factory or some issue happened at Diamond. I never did get to hear the story, or maybe it was just printed that way. I'm not sure, but it's the cover's cool and it looks great in my collection.
And what is your third item?
My third item is a personal project of mine. I have this book is it's an all blank, like everything is blank. The cover, the inside pages, the back, everything is blank, and it's a Batman logo at the top. The project behind it originally was LCSs and DC were handing these books out to just let people just make their own comics. Maybe it was a project for kids or aspiring writers and artists. But I decided to take it one step further and fill the pages with signatures and sketches. And I just started, so I only have a few signatures in it. But it's something that is going to take a long time to complete and could be expensive down the road. Who knows? But it'll definitely be one of a kind when it's finished. I know you said you were looking for 3, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a 4th. This one's really cool for a number of reasons. One, the story, how I obtained it is really cool. And 2, it's my first ever 9.4 that I got from CBCS. And I was just starting to get into grading comics and slab books. But this one is Batman Rebirth #1, and it is the DCBS variant. It is autographed by Tom King, David Finch, and the cover artist Neil Adams. And the story how I got those signatures was at Baltimore Comic-Con. Was the first con I ever went to, and I was in Neil Adams' booth. I had heard that he charges like $50 for one signature, and I didn't know that until I got there, and I was like, well, I really don't want to spend that kind of money on one signature. I'll just skip him. And we were in his booth, and I was looking at some other stuff, and somebody maliciously pulled the fire alarm. So with that, I mean, they're exiting the convention hall. And while I was in his booth with a friend, Neil Adams had asked us if we could help him carry a few things for whatever reason. Not sure what it was. And I was like, yeah, of course, man. Like, you're Neil Adams. Like, I'll help you out. No problem. So we're following Neil Adams to the back of the convention hall outside the back door. And we're just setting these couple of totes at his feet. And he asked if it was okay if we hung out, to carry the stuff back in. And I was like, dude, yeah, like no problem. And we were just shooting the breeze. And Neil Adams was very thankful for our assistance. And he's like, okay, if you guys have any books, I'll just sign them right now as a thank you. No problem. So I pulled out my couple of books and he signed that book for me. And as he was finishing that book, Tom King and David Finch came out through the same door, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, I was hoping to get these guys, but their line was like, an hour long, and now here they are with no line. And we were shooting the breeze with them too, and they said the same thing. Like, you guys got any books or whatever now that we're staying here, because we're going to be out here for God knows how long. And they signed my books too, so that's how I got all 3 signatures of that book at the same time, really. And it cost me nothing except to submit it and get it slabbed. So that was an interesting story, and it was my first ever comic book convention.
I have to say that it's probably one of the best bonuses I've ever heard. All right, so we just had some technical problems with a little power outage on Tony's side. And during that time, my occasional co-host Stitch came in for a little visit. So before we lost power, Tony, you were going to tell me about something that you are really looking forward to getting in your collection, a grail of some sort, whether it's an issue or an object that you really like to have.
Yeah, it's not a book, but it is definitely comic book related. I have the Dark Knight's Metal soundtrack on vinyl, and I was hoping to get it signed by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, but unfortunately it came a day late, so I'll have to wait until they are back in town again at our local convention. But yeah, it'll look really awesome once it's in my collection. Now we just got to find a cool way to throw up on the wall when it's done, and it'll definitely be a conversation piece.
All right. So, Tony, do you have any favorite comic-related television, movies, anything that you really enjoy that you'll watch over and over again?
I do. I have a lot, but ones that definitely stand out. My wife and I really enjoy things in the CW verse. Your Arrows, Flash. We really like Legends of Tomorrow, and I know a lot of people aren't fans of it, but we really enjoy watching it. Me personally, TVs for comic books. Constantine season 1, and the only season, unfortunately, was awesome. And I'll watch that over and over again. I love John Constantine. I thought Matt Ryan makes a great Constantine. Maybe now with this, DC app and streaming service, maybe there's something there that we can hope and pray for. Movie-wise, yeah, pretty much everything that came out. But what stands out for me is I actually liked Batman v Superman and Justice League and Suicide Squad. I know a lot of people didn't really care for those movies. Definitely something that's coming up that I'm looking forward to is the HBO Go or whatever their app is. They're coming out with a Green Lantern TV show, which is the same producer that does the CW shows. So those will be really good. And a Justice League Dark live action TV show for HBO. Both of those are going to be awesome, and I absolutely cannot wait for them.
Well, Tony, I can say that you and I probably just became friends because Constantine is one of my favorite characters. Anyone who follows my Instagram knows that I talk about him a lot. As a matter of fact, the Guild did a bracket. They did March Comic Book Madness, and the first matchup was Constantine versus Dr. Manhattan, and I am the only person that said Constantine could beat Dr. Manhattan. And the way that I did it was you don't just play to the powers, you play to the personality of the character. And Dr. Manhattan's so indifferent about everything that Ozymandias, got him to step out of his whole plan. I really think that Constantine would convince Dr. Manhattan that things would be more interesting if he wasn't there, and that he would be like, oh yeah, okay, bye, and he'd win by forfeit.
That's true. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of, Constantine. Well, there's a lot of Constantine material out there, but it's not enough of modern Constantine. And there's definitely not enough Justice League Dark. But yeah, definitely looking forward to Justice League Dark. Constantine is one of the characters they did 100% confirm in the TV show, but they haven't announced whether they're going to cast Matt Ryan or cast somebody else, but we'll see. As long as they nail the character, it doesn't matter who they cast, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, speaking of industry connections, I actually have a connection to Justice League Dark because a girl I went to high school with is married to J.J. Abrams.
That's pretty cool. Speaking of J.J. Abrams, his grandfather owns a business like maybe 4 or 5 miles down the road from me. Um, so he has a personal connection to the area, and every now and then he stops by. But nothing like that. I can't like just go knock on his grandfather's business door and be like, "Hey, here's my ideas for Justice League Dark. You can just forward these. That would be awesome." But yeah, he sounds like maybe hopefully you were friends with this young lady in school, or she remembers you enough, and you could slip her like a note card.
Here, the thing was, my 30th high school reunion wasn't too long ago, and I knew she was going to be there from all the message boards. And the whole time I was fanboying out, I'm like, what if JJ comes? That would be so great. Oh my God. So
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
he did not show up, which is too bad.
Yeah.
So, Katie McGrath, if you're out there and you happen to be listening to this, next reunion, the 40th, bring JJ with you, please.
And you promise not to bring like a whole bunch of stuff to him for to sign. Hey, will you sign my DVDs?
No, I'll just buy him drinks all night and we can just shoot the shit. That's all I care about.
Oh man, that would be so cool. Even if it was like, I could be there for like 15 minutes, and just ask questions. That would be awesome.
Well, I mean, going back to Constantine, have you been reading the Simon Spurrier Black Label?
Yeah, I do have it. I'm behind in my reading, but this is a perfect opportunity to catch up. But I do have it. From what I've read, it seems like it's going to be an awesome series. Hopefully, they fix some of the flaws that they put inside of him. I know now when he's appearing in Rebirth, he no longer has his iconic cigarette. Um, for whatever reason. I mean, I know why they replaced it, but why did they have to replace it with a lollipop? I never understood. It doesn't make sense to me, but hopefully, they look in the future and fix that problem.
Yeah, some people might disagree with me, but I really feel like Constantine has been kind of toothless in the last few years. I mean, the original Alan Moore, Jamie Delano stuff, he had some teeth to him. They did, the Justice League Dark, the very first version, had some good stuff in it, but the last few series have not been great, in my opinion. I think that he's a character that needs to be written with a little bit of attitude, and I think Simon Spurrier is starting to get back to basics with Constantine, which I'm glad to see.
And that's definitely what we need. Are you excited for the Constantine sequel movie?
Um, I didn't know that was a thing. Please tell me more.
Yeah, Warner Brothers announced they are actively trying to get another Constantine movie off the ground with Keanu Reeves, and I think it's a power move because that whole power shift between DC and Marvel and Warner Brothers and Disney. Marvel is actively trying to pursue Keanu Reeves for a Marvel project, and I think that's why we're getting another Constantine movie, and two, another Matrix movie. Is they're trying to keep Constantine in the house as much as possible, because he's like one of the hottest actors on the planet right now, and DC has him in their back pocket. Who knows? Maybe they're going to invest that actor into the DCEU. Maybe they'll, after the Flash, if they do a Flash movie, and it's one where they fold the universes together. Maybe they'll bring Keanu Reeves in, and he'll be Constantine in a DCEU connected movie. That would just be awesome.
Yeah, I thought the Keanu Reeves one was pretty good for the time. I didn't hate it. I thought the character was done pretty well by Keanu Reeves, as well as it could be done by an American. But he's so innately British. That's the only real problem I had with it. Constantine needs to be a Brit. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Which is why I like Matt Ryan's performance of Constantine so much better. I mean, he looks more like him. The accent is there, and the attitude is there. The only thing I don't like is like he wears his tie way too low. That tie is going to be up a little bit. I mean, he's like down to here.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves didn't do too bad, but I agree. Matt Ryan is like, he nailed that character for me, and I've been rooting for him ever since. And when they announced that he was going to do a little cameo in Arrow, and I was like, man, I gotta watch that Arrow. And then now he's on Legends of Tomorrow full time, and that's awesome. But like I said, hopefully we get more Matt Ryan Constantine in the future.
You mentioned Keanu Reeves possibly doing a Marvel character. Do you have a strong feeling about what character he would be appropriate for?
I'm gonna have to punt on that question only because I don't. My collection is 100% DC, so I'm not familiar with some of the minor characters or B or C characters that I've heard a lot that maybe would make a great Moon Knight, which is a character that I'm not really all that familiar with, but from what I do know about the character and Keanu Reeves as an actor, I feel like that could work.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that camp. I think he could make a great Mark Spector, and I've seen some of the fan art, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's. I mean, if you look at his performances in John Wick and the way that he fights, and the way that he approached that character, it essentially is Mark Spector, and so who knows what's going to happen, but that would be my vote.
Anything that Marvel puts out, obviously fans go crazy for, and anything that Keanu Reeves does makes fans go crazy. So I think it's great that Marvel wants to include him in that universe. But me personally, I don't know anything what I'm talking about, but I would imagine that role is going to be very minor or non-existent at all, just because of all the stuff that Warner Brothers has lined up for him, including some DC related stuff. I would imagine that they can't really go back and forth between DC and Marvel and Warner Brothers and Disney. I would imagine one of them is going to make them sign an exclusive contract. I'm guessing it's Warner Brothers is going to make them sign it just because of what's coming up in the future for him.
Yeah, it's worse than the Red Sox and the Yankees there between the two, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? It's good. Competition is always good. I would love to see DC do a little bit more and get more aggressive, so they can compete more with Marvel, and maybe even just take. There's nothing wrong with taking a page out of the book. Um, you know, being in being in the IT business. A lot of people say, "Hey, we don't want to copy Amazon, but we want to be Amazon." Well, it's tough to make that comparison, to Amazon or even Marvel because of how successful Marvel is. It's hard not to want to replicate that success in your own house. And I think, DC realized that you can't just start off with a Thanos level villain in the movies with, Darkseid, how it was supposed to be, and then Steppenwolf, and then go with their solo movies. You have to introduce the characters, which is why I think Marvel was so successful in the movies. There's this is, Iron Man, for example. This is Captain America. And I think that's what brought a lot of success to Marvel's house, is because they brought in a lot of people who necessarily don't know the characters, but love the movies. And, they probably got a whole lot of new fans. They got a lot of new people buying books that normally wouldn't buy books. And that's good for local comic book shop owners. And I think DC realized that they were definitely behind the curve at this point, and they've got a lot of catching up to do.
Do you have any non-comic or collecting-related hobbies that you enjoy?
I'm very lucky where I live. I live in the middle of a major metropolitan area, but and I'm fortunate enough to be kind of secluded in my own little neighborhood that's got a lot of woods and a lot of forest, and there's a major stream and creek that go right through my backyard. So I spend a lot of time outdoors. But collecting wise, no, unfortunately, I don't. Only because I know myself. Like if I one of the main reasons I don't collect Marvel is because I won't be able to stop, and that's why I don't do mystery boxes either. I get a mystery box in, and I got, you know, Flash number 400. Well, now I got to get all those back issues. I'm a completionist, so that's why I don't collect pops, and that's why I don't collect, you know, cards or anything like that.
Guilty. Guilty here. I get what you're saying. All right, so here's a question I love to ask Tony because it produces so many great stories, and that is, do you have an embarrassing collector story?
Yes. When I was a young kid, and I started buying books, I didn't know what a first print or a second print or even a third print. I didn't know that like one was less valuable and one was more sought after than the other. And I picked up what I thought was the first appearance of the Predator, from Dark Horse, and I was like, man, like this is cool. And this was before grading comics and slabbing comics was ever a thing. And I thought, like, man, this book's gonna be worth like $1 million someday, and I'm just gonna hold on to it, and I'm gonna take super good care of it. And then when I started, like CGC just started coming out, and I submitted that book, and I knew it was in perfect shape, and I got it back, and it came back like a 9.8. But it had this little thing in the label, and it said second printing, and I was like, "What does that mean?" So I looked it up, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, like why do they even do fourth prints? Like, who cares about a fourth print?" So that was pretty embarrassing. Luckily, you know, growing up in the Midwest in Iowa, I couldn't really brag about my first print of Predator. No one cared. So it was just embarrassing to me, and no one else pointed out my epic failure.
When you go to cons, do you ever do cosplay?
I don't. Probably because there's so many other people that are like ridiculously good at it. No one would even care or even would even notice that I would be dressed up as anything. But I do enjoy like looking at other people's cosplay. And one that sticks out in my mind, Baltimore Comic Con 2 years ago, this lady, young lady, had dressed up like the DC animated version of Hawkgirl and nailed it. Like absolutely, she looked like a cartoon, like with her armor, and she could pull a string and her wings would come out. It was amazing. I'd never seen anything like it before, and everyone was getting pictures of it. But me personally, I don't do the cosplay, but I do enjoy people watching.
Endless amounts of creativity go into some of these costumes that they do. I always do the simplest, like the thing I can wear all day without being too uncomfortable. The last cosplay I did you see the movie Into the Spider-Verse?
No, but I know of it. Yeah.
Oh, you got to see it. It's so good. But anyway, one of the Spider-Verse characters was Peter Parker, who was like in his late 40s. So he had like the middle-aged spread, and he wasn't in the best of shape. And I'm like, oh, finally a cosplay I can do that shows off my dad bod.
I got the belly hanging out of the costume a little bit. There you go. There you go.
Sweatpants and two different shoes.
Very fun.
All right, Tony. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I wanted to give you the chance to say any final words you'd like to guild members who might be watching.
Sure, sure. Definitely want to thank you for inviting me for this interview. Is a lot of fun. I could talk all day about comic books, so it's nice to have that kind of outlet. That's it's awesome. But yeah, on my YouTube channel, I got a couple different things going right now. I'm showing off my autographs weekly. So that's kind of awesome. Been enjoying editing. I have a really cool panels of the Keystone videos coming out. As soon as coronavirus stops, I'll be able to continue doing that. But yeah, guild members, you have to check out a couple people if you haven't already or already know about them. The first being Tim the Comic Collector, awesome guy. He's also a guild member. Very cool guy. Collects a lot of stuff. and his videos are always entertaining. Comic Fu 2814 does a lot of random unboxing videos, a lot of mystery hauls and toys. Rob Worst is another one that comes to mind. Dan Piercy is a great one. We all know about the big top 5 guys, Comic Tom, Rod the Rican, Jabroni, Perry, all those guys. But definitely want to encourage all of you who haven't, just to sub each other up. I see in the chat, there's a lot of really good content creators out there that are, super small. And I feel a lot of them are undervalued in terms of subscribers and views. So check everybody out, check each other out, and spread the word. I feel like a lot of us need to, include other collectors into the guild. Maybe hang up a poster at your local comic shop. Who knows? Maybe this thing could, explode, and something cool might come out of it. But I want to thank our super cool host for inviting me, and it was a lot of fun. We'll definitely maybe have to link up, next year and see what I was able to get signed and what additions we were able to make to the collection. Who knows? Maybe I got a cool new book I want to show off.
Well, we appreciate it, Tony, and I hope you do stay in touch. Thanks for being a guest on Come Together.
Thank you, sir.
Stay safe out there.
Yes. Hopefully this thing will all blow over and books will be back on the shelves in no time.
From your mouth to God's ears. Have a good one, Tony.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for Come Together, the show that spotlights membership for the Comic Collectors Guild. If you would like to be spotlighted for our show, please send me a message in my DMs on Instagram at Comics Addicts. You can also contact our administration. Their handles will be at the end of the video. The Comics Collectors Guild is an open forum for all collectors and fandoms. Regardless of who you are and what you love, you are welcome to join for free. Just contact one of our administrators for details. It doesn't matter if you are a lover of cosplay or if you're an artist, writer, inker. If you love Doctor Who, manga, Lord of the Rings, anime, all are welcome to join. Please consider subscribing, leave us a like or a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.
And I think you can actually just look at the Instagram page and see the progression, because we've been doing all this collection together, and it's actually made us stronger. There's a few times where she's like, "Did you spend that much money on a comic book?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Did you spend that much on an omnibus?" She's like, "No." So I like the back issues. She likes the trades.
Like I said earlier, like we just always are going to shops together and cons, and a lot of some local artists and friends that we know are just like, "Oh, hey, and they know our account, but they know us by name," and they just think that adds to our relationship too.